The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Back, San Francisco Giant Baseball. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and the host of the show is Michael Duca. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Ralph, how are you?
I'm not bad at all. We are about a week and a half into the new season, and I want your impressions. How are things going in your eyes?
Well, I think what I'm seeing pretty much across baseball is that the very short period of time between the opening of camp this year and the beginning of live game action is showing up now. And the way I see it showing up is I think the pitchers are still ahead of the hitters, and they're further ahead of the hitters than they normally are by this point in spring. If you look at we were joking about it before we came on the air, but if you look at Shohei Ohtani, who has already won a game as a pitcher, has also hit more home runs than the Miami Marlins. And there are just a whole string of really good major league hitters who are below the Mendoza line.
Michael, we talked about this because in past shows, there's no way to quantify the results of a player or team in spring training as to opposed to when the bell rings. Altany's a great example. He had a horrible spring, both batting and pitching. He comes out, pitches a complete game, hits 3 home runs, looks like the natural. And why competition during spring? Why not control? Well, I guess I know why. They sell tickets to the games, but they should have controlled workouts that are would be much more beneficial to prepare for a season. Have a few games here and there, but not an entire schedule. That would be progressive, I think. Well,
it might be, and it might not be. But one thing I know for sure about it, we'll never know.
They're not going to go
back
and be
that's
doing
never
that.
Going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, of course they're not. I mean, if you stop and think about how many, and I am saying this with a B, billions of dollars the Phoenix area has spent alone building 10 stadiums and 10 minor league complexes for the benefits of these teams. They got to get the money back somewhere, and they get the money back from all of the tourism money that comes in from people coming to watch the games. The thirst for baseball, especially in snowbound areas, by the time March 1st rolls around, is really something to see. Unless you've been to spring training and looked at literally wave upon wave upon wave of snow-white, pasty-complexioned people from Wisconsin who are desperate for even 10 minutes of sunshine, let alone an entire Milwaukee Brewers game. It's a rite of spring. It's a rite of passage for some people. It's a way for grandparents to spend spring break with their grandchildren. There's way too much tradition here for this to change. Plus, I'm not entirely convinced that 4 weeks of PTPs is going to improve the A's defense, or 4 weeks of batting practice is going to get people's averages higher at the start of the season. I think that the game speed is necessary, and there are things that happen in spring that need to happen, and they can only really happen effectively under game action. If you're standing at the plate in an inter-squad game and there's runners on first and second and nobody out, everybody on the field knows that it's time to practice the sacrifice bunt. But if you're in a live action game and it's the top of the first and it's scoreless and your first 2 guys get on, or it's the top of the seventh and you're down 10-1 and the first two guys get on. Those aren't situations where you would normally see a sacrifice bunt. You wouldn't normally see the infield in the first inning. But you see that all the time in spring training because teams take advantage of the opportunity to practice situational defense and situational hitting whenever the situations apply themselves. What really doesn't count in spring training is the records. And that includes for the pitchers. You have to look at the fact that the pitchers are 100% there to work on their mechanics, work on their rhythm, get stretched out, enter the season healthy. Nobody is going to break out their September and October breaking ball in February and March. You're not going to see it. With the sole exception of the one time that Otani batted against Kershaw. Kershaw dropped a curveball on him that was straight out of the last week of October. I mean, it was insane.
Right. Well, he got some adrenaline up to drop that curveball, and that's the problem. In exhibition games, the adrenaline just doesn't run like it does when the bell rings, and that's what really fine-tunes a pitcher and a batter's skills, is that adrenaline. So if you can't recreate it in spring, I don't understand. Well, again, if it weren't for the business thing, from a pure get players ready for the season, from purely that standpoint, I think the whole spring training thing is behind the times. But as you say, that's not going to change, and it's not expected to change.
Well, and I don't know how you can necessarily say it's behind the times. If you think that there's no adrenaline in playing, in the Giants seeing a Dodger uniform on the other side of the field in March, then how exactly do you think you're going to generate that when they're seeing Sacramento River Cats uniform on the other side of the field? I mean, if it's all intra-squad stuff, then there's no there at all.
Very, very true. But there has to be either a combination of the two. I'll tell you why. How many pitchers have gotten hurt so far this year, notwithstanding the Giants themselves? And those injuries weren't as a result of lack of spring training or lack of being in shape. But I don't know.
Well, freak injuries are going to happen whenever freak injuries happen. I mean, if you're going to get, if you stop and think about the statistical likelihood of getting hit on the tip of your little finger with a line drive that is aimed at your chest.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Or you can get an injury from picking up baggage at the airport.
Or carrying it home. Yes, Salvi Perez. Or, go back a few years, you can get injured by sticking a glazed donut in the microwave and then biting down on it and fracturing your tooth.
Or being in a cab and having your arm up behind your neck. I remember one guy threw his whole season away doing that, pulled muscle in a cab or something. Injuries
How about his rookie year? Chipper Jones, the talk of baseball, injured his knee slipping on water on the floor at the shopping mall the Sunday before the season opened. I mean, accidents are exactly that. They're accidents. And while they may be preventable, they're not entirely preventable.
Right. Right. A lot of it is just keeping your head in the game, for instance. And that doesn't have to be on the field. That can be off the field as well. Are you happy with the way the Giants are set up now? Do you think they could keep it going until the pitchers till Gardner comes back. Is there a possibility? I was thinking if they play 500 ball until they get those two pitchers back, you may have hope of the season not being ruined. Is that
well? If
pretty?
There's a reason
numbers?
that what you say is true. There's an important reason why what you say is true, and I don't think most people have actually looked at it to figure that out. But the real reason that they're going to be okay if they play 500 ball until they get those pitchers back is that means that they will likely play 500 ball in the first month of the season, and they face a whole lot of good baseball teams in the first month of the season. They play the Dodgers 10 times. They play the Diamondbacks 6 times. They play Washington. I mean, they've got a difficult row to hoe the first month of the season. After that, they're going to face a lot of Padres and some other folks who are not going to enjoy much success this year, and they might actually be able to make a little bit of a move. So I would tend to agree with you that if they can keep their heads at or above water for the first 30 days or so of the season, they're probably going to be in decent shape. As to whether I'm happy with how they look and how they stack up, too small of a sample size. I mean, they looked absolutely spectacular in the first 2 games because the Dodgers didn't score. But you got to look at the flip side of that. The Dodgers have been one hit twice in the first week of the season. Once by the Giants and once by the Diamondbacks. Now, that's a good sign for the Giants if the Dodgers are scuffling against their own division. It's a good sign for the Giants if the Dodgers start out 2-5, which is their worst start in 20 years. But at the same time, you've also, and you look at it, you say, well, the Dodgers were only one hit twice in the previous 2 seasons put together. But what does that mean? It means they were one hit twice in the first week. It doesn't mean anything about the next week or the 24 weeks that followed. And if you think the Dodgers are going to get one hit once a week for the rest of the year, I got some nice swampland to sell you.
Right, there are not. And also, Kelly Jansen is not going to have the kind of year that the first week and a half indicates he'd have. He's going to come back.
Maybe.
Do you think he's hurt or something wrong with him?
That's a distinct possibility. He was hurt at the start of spring. He saw very limited action in the spring. I believe he only pitched back-to-back games 1 time in the spring, maybe 2. So I think they have to be careful with him early on. And I think that any signs of an issue, they need to be especially careful with him.
Okay.
He's a very, very important key to that ball club.
Yeah, if you would have thought of any relief pitcher going into spring training who a team could count on to be solid, it would be him. And again, he's struggling, and it has to be. I'd say it has to be something they're not being forthcoming with. No team is forthcoming with injuries. It's not just the teams I root for, but it's basically all of them. I understand why that is.
Baseball's a lot more forthcoming than, shall we say, football.
Oh yeah,
which just says someone is probable or likely or doubtful or I don't even know what the scale is there. I don't know which is worse. The only one that I understand is out. Right. But at least in baseball, you're either on the disabled list or you're not. You don't. And when you're on the disabled list, you're on the disabled list with a sprained knee. You're not on the disabled list with a lower body injury like you get in hockey. In hockey, there's only 2 injuries, up and down.
Michael, when you talk about this, it always reminds me of what you told me that Dusty Baker said. He said he'd been on the disabled list exactly 0 times in a 15-year career. And until last week, whenever it was he said this, I didn't even know, quoting him, I didn't even know what an oblique injury was. I had no idea there was an oblique. So injuries are the whole idea of injuries and different types of severeness of the injuries. It was never reported that way. Guy has a sore shoulder, he's out. Now it's a third-degree strain. You did this, that, and the other thing. It's what it amounts to. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry taking care of the players as if they're thoroughbred horses, as opposed to, hey, we'll replace them. It doesn't matter. It's all interchangeable.
Well, that's one of the things that happened. When salaries started going up, the investment in players, and particularly when longer-term contracts came into play, the investment in players made it imperative that the players' well-being outside of the games became a concentration and a focus of the teams. And you think that modern players are hurt more often than the old-timers were, but that's just because the modern players are now being treated, and they're being treated aggressively, and they're getting back into the game, where in the old days, a guy just, he's got a sore hose, he's done.
Right.
You know, and that was it. Guys retired when they were 27 with a sore arm. That sore arm turned out to be, you know, something that was repairable with Tommy John surgery a few years later, and that then became a year off, not a career off.
Exactly. But it's not as if the owners cared to do it just for the players' sake. It was for the investment's sake. I mean,
of course.
Yeah, just so there's no
but,
misunderstanding
you
that they haven't become magnanimous about the people in the baseball family, if you will. It's just how many bucks does it translate to? How many bucks can it bring?
Well,
in?
yeah, but you can't look a gift horse in the mouth. If people behave correctly for the wrong reasons, at least they're still behaving correctly.
Good point. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about in direct relationship to possible injuries is the scheduling of games based on the craziness of scheduling games early on in the Northeast when teams should be playing in Atlanta. Atlanta should never be on the road early on like this. Arizona should be home all the time. The California team should be home. The way I look at it, they tried scheduling a schedule change back in the 80s. It seemed to work. They had tepid weather in the spring for a couple of years, and they went right back to what we see now, which is not taking weather into consideration. And I wonder how many injuries are because of the cause of just too damn cold out there to warm up to play the game.
Well, I don't profess to have ever been an athlete. So I cannot really speak to you about whether it's too cold to warm up and play the game. But I can tell you that, I vacationed for 3 weeks this January in Washington, D.C. and New York City. And while it wasn't really comfortable being in 5-degree to 25-degree weather, it wasn't so cold that I got injured either. Except for the one time that I slipped on the ice and fell on my head. But that was,
That was an aside.
Yeah.
You bounced right up. That was
gravity.
You bounced right up from that.
Yeah, I did. I didn't walk straight, but I bounced.
Slowly. Oh. And you went back there. You weren't feeling all that well physically. Anyway, I think you had a cold or the flu. When you went back
there? Yeah, I was
initially.
fighting something at the time.
Yeah. Hey, I want to take my hat off to Mr. Duffy over at Tampa. He's healthy, and he's giving them what they traded for. I thought the Giants gave up a lot when they traded for Matt Moore. notwithstanding that he didn't really work out as a Giant. I liked Duffy, and I thought he was the heart of that team, that infield, a couple of years ago. And from a personal standpoint, it's nice to see him doing well, because he'd been hurt about a year and a half.
Yeah, he wasn't all that healthy when the Giants sent him over, and he got hurt very quickly afterwards.
Right.
Yeah, he's a good kid, and I wish him nothing but success. One thing that's a little bit different in modern baseball than it used to be, if you look at Pablo Sandoval and Matt Kemp, and there's a lot of other examples of it out there too, is guys come back.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Cahill coming back to the A's. I mean, guys come back. Teams know what they have, and the fact that they trade you away does not mean they don't value you. Sometimes they value you a whole lot, and they bring you back as quickly as they can. And so, it wouldn't surprise me to see Matt Duffy return to the Bay Area someday, just because of his popularity, how well liked he was in that clubhouse, and the fact that I think he's probably going to earn himself a pretty decent contract when the time comes, and that's usually when Tampa Bay puts out the for sale sign.
Yeah, it was nice seeing Pablo hit one the other day. I got to say that. That was heartwarming.
Yeah, and what a bargain. I mean,
somebody else is paying basic everything but meal money. I think that's what it comes down to. Yeah, nice. And he'll get his at bats. A guy with that kind of stick will always, over the course of the season, be well appreciated and well wanted. He looks slimmer too than I thought he'd look.
Mhm. He's got a spring in his step, and he's got a permanent smile on his face. He will readily, publicly acknowledge that he made a mistake in leaving, and that the best thing that happened to him was having the opportunity to fail in Boston and come back.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Plus, he really accepts his role now. He understands that he's a bench player. He understands that he's not a starter and probably isn't going to be again, barring serious injury. But he understands his role. He goes down around the fifth or sixth inning and starts taking swings in the cage so he can be ready to be a pinch hitter. I could see him developing into a guy who maybe challenges for the all-time pinch hit record. I really could.
Oh, wow. That's a good point. That, he's still young. He's still, 34?
Oh, he's younger than that, I think. I will endeavor to look that up while we talk here. But,
okay. That would, seen a lot of guys with just bats. Smokey Burgess comes to mind. Manny Mota, just guys that are hitting machines that will come off the bench. Very well needed.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too many people listening who remember Smokey Burgess, but if they do, then they probably remember the really extraordinary pinch hitter of that time, Jim Lynch.
Jim Lynch with Cincinnati, absolutely. And Bob Skinner, there were guys at George Crow. There were guys who just liked to do it, enjoyed doing it, and made a career out of it, really. It's nice. Good memories, Smokey Burgess and Jerry Lynch. That takes me right back to 1961 or 60 or right around there. The Pirates and Cincinnati.
Rocky Nelson.
Another pinch hitter, right? Platooning with Dick Stewart.
There you go.
A walking pinch hitter. If he could have been a DH today, he'd have hit 50 home runs every year.
But if the DH existed when Dick Stewart was playing, we wouldn't have one of the greatest lines by a ball player on the field in the history of the game.
What's that?
Augie Donatelli umpiring at first base. Stewart butchers 3 balls in 1 inning And after the third one, he turns to Donatelli and he says, "For Christ's sake, Augie, don't just stand there. Get a glove and help me."
That's very good. That really is very
So,
good.
to answer your earlier question, Pablo will be 32 in August.
Whoa. Whoa, younger than I thought. So
he's just a whippersnapper.
Yes. Half my very age, and then some. I've got much more than less than half my age. Oh my God. That's all right. We still have the memories, and I really wouldn't want it any other way. And I have no intention of ever hoping to live it again. one time through the lineup, please, thank you. And with a do not resuscitate sign to amplify what I'm saying. I just glad to get through it once with my memory intact, but I wouldn't want to do it again, and I'm sure not many of us really would, unless of course they get some genetic stuff that can keep us alive or keep us going, or have we missed that boat? Who knows? Michael.
Oh, I don't know.
How
who
long
knows?
did
Cambridge Analytica knows?
Yes. Okay, do you see good things happening? Do you see the possibility, like I say, of playing 500 ball until we get Bumgarden and Samardzija back? Could it happen? And
well,
now
I definitely see 500 ball until we get Samardzija back, because he may be back this week.
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
yeah, he's thrown and he's ready. They think that he will probably only need one rehab start, so he could be back, by the end of next week. He could be in the rotation.
Nice. And you know who's coming into his own? The boy from St. John's, who the Mets should have gotten right from the start. There should be some sort of territorial thing to keep people's interest in young players coming up. But that's not going to happen either, and that's Mr. Panik. He is really developing into one of the best second basemen in baseball. Yep.
He's always been one of the better defensive second basemen in baseball. There's a lot of them, and he's playing in a time when there are great offensive second basemen and great defensive second basemen. DJ LeMahieu is a great offensive second baseman, and Mr. Altuve covers all the bases literally, usually while he's flying around them on his way to the next one. But for combined hitting and fielding talent, Panik, he's probably not Altuve, but he's not far behind.
Right. Which, if you put him with Crawford, an infield of Crawford, double play combination, you really have something. That's something that can't be. Crawford, Posey, and Panik as your up the middle guys, and now you have speed in center field, at least coming down the road. Duca's really going to be something. You could see this team being real contenders quickly when they get Bumgarner back. So keeping it.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a couple of other things to keep in mind here. There's been a real surprise this spring that nobody's talking about, and that's Pierce Johnson. Pierce Johnson in the bullpen has opened a lot of eyes. I mean, he was sent down to the minor leagues in the very first round of cuts at the beginning almost of spring games, and pitched his way not only